Some breaking news. A murder investigation has been launched by the Metropolitan Police following the results of a post-mortem examination into the death of a 68-year-old Russian, the businessman Nikolai Glushkov. Well, our correspondent Tom Simons is here with the latest on this breaking story. And Tom, this is a murder investigation being launched into the death of another Russian on British soil. Just tell us a bit more about it.
Yeah, Ben, this is quite a development. This is a man who's 68 years old, described by the police as a retired financial director. He was found dead at his home, and the police sent along counter-terrorism detectives to investigate. They have been looking at this pretty much all week, and they have just said that they believe the cause of death was compression to the neck, and therefore they have launched a murder inquiry. And because of Nikolai Glushkov's previous connections, they have decided that that will be run by counter-terrorism officers. Given what has happened in the last 2 weeks, it's a big development. Mr Glushkov was on #1 on a list of people who the Russians have asked to be extradited back to Russia in connection with alleged financial crimes in Russia. He's somebody who was involved in a court case. He's accused of embezzling funds from Aeroflot, the Russian airline, and somebody with links to Russian dissidents and people who are opponents of Vladimir Putin. The Met, however, say they are keeping an open mind at this stage.
I think we're just seeing pictures actually of the house where his body was found, and you can see the blue tent there, some police activity, a lot of police activity there, of course. And just to underline, this man, Mr Glushkov, was significantly a close friend of Boris Berezovsky, who was in turn a real critic and a thorn in the side of President Putin of Russia.
Absolutely. He was a friend of Mr Berezovsky's. Mr Berezovsky was a friend of Ms Litvinenko's. And so you can see how all these people who are Russians living in the UK, who are opponents of the Russian government and of Vladimir Putin, how this all is a concern for the police. This wasn't ever going to be, even had it been natural causes, this was never going to be a simple case for the police. Those pictures we saw there, the tents are there because the police are carrying out a major search of his home, and anything they want to take out of the home will be placed in those tents that you can see there. I think there's also one in the back garden there as well. And so this will now be a major murder investigation. Now, the one thing that the Met are saying, apart from saying they're keeping an open mind, is that there is no current link to events in Salisbury. But the timing of this has to raise questions, and it will, of course, give the government another headache, because they're already defending themselves from suggestions that they've gone too early and too hard on the Skripal attempted murder. And so, therefore, it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. Also, though, of course, we've heard from the government that other possibly unexplained deaths of Russians, 14, I think, on British soil, are also being re-examined, re-investigated by the police.
Yeah, the Home Office has asked for another look at those cases. There have been question marks about some of those cases for a great deal of time. And clearly, I think that it's fair to say that the government did not feel it had a possible threat of Russian dissidents, opponents of the regime in Russia, being attacked, being murdered. It did not think that threat existed until what happened in Salisbury. And now that might be a threat that it has to consider much more widely, hence the wider look at that list of 14. Also worth saying that Mr Glushkov was due to give evidence in the court case that I mentioned earlier, the Aeroflot court case. He was due to give evidence in that case in person on Monday at the High Court. He didn't show up. As a result, the court was adjourned, and so he was somebody who was very much connected with that previous allegation against him in Russia that he embezzled a vast amount of money from Aeroflot.
So the police saying at this stage there is nothing to link this investigation, this murder investigation in the Glushkov case, with the attempted murders in Salisbury, but nothing at this stage. That doesn't necessarily mean a link will not transpire.
No, there's no clear link between Mr Skripal and Mr Glushkov that we're aware of at this stage. One may transpire, but at this stage we're not aware of one. Of course, the types of alleged attacks on them are different. The nerve agent used in Salisbury what appears to be possible strangulation in New Malden, where Mr Glushkov lived for 2 years. So on the face of it, nothing to say that there is a link. But clearly, these are two Russians who were opponents of that country's government, and they have, well, one has been potentially murdered, and the other one has been an attempted murder.